This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Today's sponsor is EverFi. April is Financial Literacy Month, and they have fantastic free digital lessons for K-12 students. So stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more about these valuable lessons. I'm so excited. Today, we are with one of my quote, oldest friends on the internet. We did the Flat Classroom project back in 2000, won the ISTE Online Learning Award in 2000 for Best Global Collaborative Project. And it was a lot of fun, AJ. It was a long time ago for both of us.
Yes.
But, and I'm saying this because I rely on AJ. He's a thought leader. He has amazing keynotes. He's written bestsellers, Empathy, Launch, Adaptable, and now he has a new book, Meaningful and Relevant, Engaging Learners in the Age of Distraction. He also has a podcast called The Backwards, and that's Backwards Engineering Problems, which is great. AJ, we're going to talk today about how can we be meaningful and relevant and engage learners in an age of distraction. And you know what? Kids have changed. How have they changed?
Vicki, thanks again for having me on the podcast. It's always great to catch up with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're someone I've been looking up to since I was a classroom teacher, looking for something to do with my kids that were going to get them beyond the classroom walls, and Flat Classroom project was amazing. But many things over the years. We were chatting and you mentioned a term that I've been talking about a lot as well, which is that we're in this moment of a hinge of history. Right? Yeah. This moment of a hinge of history where there's a technological advancement that happens that impacts everybody.
Yes.
It kind of changes the world a little bit. And you can think about printing press and the information revolution, right? You can think about the telegraph and all of a sudden making the world smaller because people have transatlantic communication, radio and television, mass broadcasts. Obviously, the digital revolution with computers. And the last one we were just in was the internet. You know, obviously, a lot of people are talking about AI as being this hinge of history right now, but the internet really changed kids and us for good. Mm-hmm. And you know, I want you to think about this. Do you remember that show, Cribs, Vicki, back in the day? Remember that show?
I don't.
It was the best, right? It was just basically showing you famous people's houses. So
yeah. Okay.
See their cars. It was their crib, and you got to see inside of their fridge and everything like that. When I was growing up, that was my only insight into the world of the rich and famous. You know, I lived in a small town. I had two friends that were quote unquote rich. One was a lawyer, a doctor, right? That was the type of thing. Today's kids live in such a different world, Vicki, right? I have 5 kids of my own. I have a teenager, I have a middle schooler. They on these devices, I'm holding up a phone in my hand right here, follow thousands of people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars from doing dances, putting on makeup, playing video games. And so when we talk about our kids in today's world, we try to say, follow this traditional path. School is important. 7 hours a day, pay attention, 2 hours of homework. It's very difficult for this generation to understand that in the same way we did because they have a whole different world at their fingertips that they're experiencing.
So how do we engage them in education? Is it hopeless? We know it's not.
No, I don't think it's hopeless at all. But I think, there's 4 big things I always talk about. We need our learning experiences to be human, to be social, to be meaning-centered, and to be language-based. Now, of course, those 4 things have changed over time. But if you had Aristotle and Socrates, those 4 things create a learning and engage experience in their time. For us, the things that don't really work anymore are traditional, compliance-based, boring, and standardized. AI crushes those, but also kids don't pay attention when that is the environment. And so we need to focus on those big 4 things.
So can we go through each of these 4 things and just let you give examples? So learning experiences need to be human. Go there.
Human. So they need to be human in the same way that we need to interact with people, right? So human basically means it doesn't always have to be face-to-face, but you've probably had like a meaningful conversation on this device over the past 24, 48 hours, right?
Right before we talked.
With necessarily a computer or something along those lines. Now, they can be aided by a digital device, but still
like you and me with a Flat Classroom.
Yes, right, exactly, right? So that's human. We were using wikis. Nowadays, you can use something else, but that idea of interacting. Social takes that a next level. Social basically says, in the real world outside of school, you're not necessarily doing a lot of whole tests by yourself. You're able to interact with your peers, able to ask questions. I always think about like that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You can phone a friend, right? So we can do that all the time in the real world. That's that social aspect of things. When we go down to meaning centered, now all of a sudden it gets pretty serious. Is the experiences our kids are having in school meaningful and relevant? Or are they just a product of a very standardized curriculum? I'll give you an example, Vicky. When I was young, I went through my dinosaur phase. And I believe everybody had a dinosaur phase, right? But when I went through my dinosaur phase, I went to my third grade teacher, Miss Herron. I said, hey, Miss Herron, it's September. When are we going to learn about dinosaurs? And she said February. And the only thing I could do between September and February is go to the library and pull out a book. Well, my son just went through his dinosaur phase. And he didn't have any of that problem. He was watching a live show on YouTube from the very best paleontologist in the world who was at a dig site putting on a show for kids. That's the difference of meaning. We have to tap into all those experiences that are out there for our kids and bring them to our kids, or at least help them go and get them. And that's what meaning looks like. And the last one, which is language-based, just means in any way, shape, or form, there needs to be that communication that's happening for learning to happen. And it could be communication with texting, emails, online, DMing, all those different types of things, or it could be face-to-face in a language-based communication. But language and learning to use language effectively is pretty much one of the most important skills that we have out there. So those four are the big ones right now.
Because text opens the door for everything from creating other text to creating art to creating music. And we're not talking about all the ethics right now, but creating just about anything now comes down to our ability to use descriptive, effective, imaginative, creative language. Like language has always been important, but that's where the spark of creativity, because AI by itself is pretty bland and not creative. AI with a human, and man, it uses the word delve all the time. Like, what's up? Like, ChatGPT has his favorite words, and it drives me crazy because if I see somebody use the word delve, I'll know they use ChatGPT to write it. Isn't that horrible?
ChatGPT is always delving, right? Always.
It's always delving. It's like, what's up with this? What's it? What delve? What? Who says that? ChatGPT says his favorite word.
No,
so you've noticed it too.
Yes, I mean, I think you're right. So, in a world of AI, we still want kids to think. We want them to create. And the only way as an educator or a parent or a mentor that I can see kids thinking is through their use of language. And so language is so important for us to focus on right now in all its variety of forms.
So let's talk about what it can't be, because sometimes we have to have a wake-up call. How long have we been saying that, quote, lecture doesn't work? Now, I want to make a caveat because, like, there are a few times a year I can give a speech on the history of technology that is uniquely me because I have lived it. I have been using a computer since I was 7. I can talk about the day this happened, the day that happened, the first time I used, like, it is different because I am telling stories.
Yeah.
And it's a human connection and it's a conversation. Okay. So we can't say teacher at the front of the room never happens, because that's part of being human and interesting and all that. Right. But every day, lecturing bell to bell, like, what's it going to take to help us understand that doesn't necessarily engage learners?
I would start off and just say, I think we already know that. Whenever I ask people what your best learning experiences are, it's normally something that they're doing hands-on, experiential, project-based, inquiry-based. What are the things that you remember from your schooling experience? It's a connection with the teacher. How do you build those connections? A lot of times through those projects and things like that, right? So I think we inherently know it. And I actually empathize with teachers and administrators everywhere, because the system has put a lot of guardrails on folks where they have to cover curriculum, they have to teach to test, those different types of things. And so a lot of times the system is set up where it makes it really hard to do some of the things that we just know inherently work. Look at the research, it works as well. But one of my favorite things that I like working with teachers all the time is I like having them say, okay, you have a unit coming up and you know that the students think a little bit's boring. This is where I think the power of AI really helps, because previously I would have to sit down and spend hours with my colleagues trying to come up with some meaningful and relevant ways to engage our learners. Now, when I work with teachers, I use a tool like ChatGPT or Magic School, and I give what grade level I'm teaching, right? Set the context. I give what my unit's about, set kind of what that experience is. And then I can tell Magic School in the make it relevant portion there, I can tell ChatGPT, hey, here are what my students are interested in. You know, maybe they're interested in social media and video games and sports or whatever, you know, makeup, whatever I want to be. Give me some ideas to make this unit relevant. And all of a sudden, I got 3, 4, 5 ideas that I can then take my human intelligence to take it a step further in something that's actionable. So now I've gone and saved that 10 hours of time in terms of coming up with the ideas. I've got the ideas, and now I can use my time to actually put it into action. And I've just seen teachers' eyes light up when they get these ideas because they want to do what's best for kids. They want to get that attention through meaningful and relevant ways. And now it's more accessible than ever.
Yeah. Listen, I've learned more about soccer, which is big at my school, using ChatGPT because most of my kids in my AP Computer Science Principles class play soccer. And so they were struggling with the difference between parameters and arguments. And I was able to go in and say, I need some examples of parameters and arguments using soccer examples. And I need problems that they can solve. And listen, the light bulb went on. I was honest with them. I'm trying to teach you parameters and arguments. I'm trying to make it relevant. And then we actually went in and I had them create other examples using ChatGPT. And I said, okay, how can we use this tool to teach us? Pick something you like. And so one person did the best example was actually football. And like the whole class is like, we get it. And, you know, and that was a great moment, but it was not only I modeled it, I taught them. So I really like to talk a lot about effective use of AI. It's appropriate to use it here, not there. And this is just part of being a teacher, like guiding them through. So there are a lot of schools that are afraid of AI and don't want to talk about it, or they'll say you can't mention it or you can't talk about it. And I think the last time I saw this fear in my lifetime was when the internet came out. You know, don't talk about it. We're not going to admit that it's there. What do you do to help people through the fear factor into, okay, how do we live with this and teach with this and find its appropriate place?
Yeah, you know, I'm afraid as well.
Yeah.
People, I'm not pro AI or anti AI. I'm just kind of more of a realist that it's here. You know, I have kids in school. I work with teachers and students all the time, and so there's very real ethical, moral, bias concerns out there. What I like to tell people is to focus, right? It's kind of twofold. Number one, there's some tools out there that have already been created for educators with some safeguards in place that are helping educators do great work. I use Magic School as an example. It helps you at the same time. You can develop real world connections, relevant things, choice boards. You can summarize text, level text, right? You know, translate text, all these things that we do, you know, all the time. Helps with IEPs, with accommodations, modifications. So why not start there with your staff and saying, let's use this together with a tool that's created for educators with some safeguards in place and see how you can use it, right? The second way is when we talk about student use, we have to be very clear that we're using tools that actually have child privacy and data laws, you know, at the heart, right? So the two that I like a lot are CuriPod, which is kind of like a Nearpod, Pear Deck, you know, Kahoot type thing, where kids don't have to log in with Google. They don't have to do anything. They just put in their name. And so there's none of that privacy or data that you're losing there. And the same one is School AI, which does the same thing. So I like those two tools. But Vicki, the big thing that I talk about when I work with schools a lot is that we have to talk about it and address it. We can't live in some fairyland where we act like this doesn't exist on every device that our kids and of us have, right? And so we can't just keep on playing the gotcha games trying to catch these. We actually have to create some parameters or protocols or how we use it. Now, a school district outside of Philadelphia near me, the Garnet Valley School District, created this wonderful traffic light protocol that I share all the time. And basically, red would be a lesson or activity where we're not allowed to use AI. We want to see your thinking, you individually. There's plenty of opportunities where we don't really want AI or assisted, technologies to come help the kids. And so that would be a red kind of lesson or activity. Then there's yellow. That's where the students have to ask for permission. Say a kid is struggling with math and they say, hey, Mr. J, am I able to use, photo math to just kind of help me see some of the work problems and solutions tonight as I'm getting ready for that quiz, just to help me out? Of course, because they asked my permission, I'm giving it back to them, right? There's a kid that's struggling on a writing assignment. They want to come up with some ideas. Hey, can I use this tool? Of course, right? They're getting some permission. That would be yellow. And then there's green. And green is where teachers, we're encouraging use. An example I like to give for this one is, MLA citation and works cited. I used to spend hours and units on that. I would now kids use these two tools, get your work cited right, your MLA citation, keep the academic integrity, but it'll take all the time that it used to take. So now we have that red, yellow, and green. We're able to actually discuss and talk about use with our staff members, with our colleagues, of course, with the kids.
So what are your favorite tools for MLA and APA?
I mean, I still like, the Purdue Al trusted one out there, but my favorite AI one is actually Jenny.ai, which is JENNI.ai, especially for high school students and older. It just does a fantastic job.
You taught me a new one. I'm so excited. Well, AJ Juliani, the new book is meaningful and relevant, engaging learners in an age of distraction. He's real deal. And I highly recommend AJ just for everything. And I hope that all of you will go out and pre-order his book. Now let's talk about today's sponsor, EverFi, that made this episode possible. Everybody remembers that teacher, the study hall teacher who walked you through your first college application, the social studies teacher who taught you what taxes were and how to file them, the math teacher who used student loans to show you how interest worked. You can be that teacher. And EverFi wants to help you make that kind of impact with free digital lessons for K through 12 students. From budgets and banking to credit and savings, you will find a financial literacy topic that's right for your classroom, just like I have. And especially during April, Financial Literacy Month. There is no better time to equip students with smart decision-making around finances. So learn how you can share these free resources with students and give them a financial foundation that lasts a lifetime. So check out everfi.com/coolcat. That's everfi.com/coolcat.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you want more content from Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook, X.com, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.